At the 15-minute mark of A Fistful of Dollars and at the 28-minute mark of A Better Tomorrow, Sergio Leone and John Woo simultaneously created a new way of filming action, a new genre, a new superstar, and a new iconic character. Their journey to that historical point, and where they went from there, also bear remarkable similarities, which make for an interesting case study. Within about 20 years, they made two very different, yet analogous trilogies of movies, which left an indelible mark on world action cinema. At first glance, it may not seem obvious what the similarities are between Sergio Leone and John Woo. What they are, that is, beyond the fact that their movies are both centered around the use of the gun. However, both of them worked first as assistant director and then as director in a genre that had nothing to do with guns, but that had deep roots in their respective culture. Leone in the sword and sandal or peplum genre. Movies envisioned as spectacles and set in the Greco-Roman antiquity. Incidentally, the term peplum comes from the Greek word for tunic. And Wu in the swordplay and kung fu genre set in historical China. During this period, Sergio Leone worked on many big sword and sandal productions you may have heard of. As you will see in the following clips from these movies, the big action scenes and the use of horses were a good preparation for Leone's westerns. Let's start with Quo Vadis, directed by Mervyn LeRoy.
That's right, I have. I made about 55 tests of English character actors, women, and all types of people for the 77 speaking parts in Quo Vadis.
This is going to be one of those gigantic MGM spectacles, isn't it?
Well, we hope so, but after all, the story's the thing, you know, the play's the thing always.
Where are you going to shoot it?
In Italy.
In Rome?
Yes.
Around Rome?
At the Cinecittà Studios.
Helen of Troy, directed by Robert Wise. This peplum is based on the Homeric epic The Iliad. In an interview, Leone said, "Probably the greatest writer of westerns himself was Homer. His characters were never all good or all bad. They're half and half, these characters, as all human beings are. And I am searching, as Diogenes did with his lantern, for all of these wonderful human beings. I haven't found them yet." Ben-Hur, directed by William Wyler.
The producer of Ben-Hur came to me and said, how about doing Ben-Hur? I thought it would be intriguing to see if I could make a Cecil B. DeMille picture. So I took on the job. It was in line with my desire to make every kind of picture. Also, I thought this picture could make lots of money, you know, and maybe I'll get some of it, which I did.
And Sodom and Gomorrah, directed by Robert Aldrich, who said, "Sergio Leone was second unit director on Sodom and Gomorrah, and he was loafing and was terrible. He was up in Marrakesh, and I was shooting in the south, and had to take Saturday off. So I made the 4-hour drive up to Marrakesh. Nobody knew I had come, and he had 5,000 or 6,000 people working, and they were taking a 3-hour Italian lunch. I was up on the buffs, and I waited for about 3 hours while nothing happened, and then 4 hours and still nothing happened. I called him and I said, 'Get your ticket and go back to Rome, you're through.' He went back to Rome, and they had no director for the first Clint Eastwood picture, and that's why he's a zillionaire and I'm broke." End quote. For his part, John Woo worked most notably for Shang-Chi, whom he considers a mentor. Wu said of him, "Knowing my potential, he found my bearings for me and helped me bolster my self-confidence and self-esteem. Looking back, Shang-Chi not only taught me how to direct, but also the way of life. I am always grateful." Shang-Chi was always a pioneer. The unique cinematographic style, free-flowing and kinetic martial arts choreography of his films influenced local and overseas cinemas alike, putting Hong Kong cinema on the map. End of quote.
相公，
In Shang-Chi's movies, the themes of honor, loyalty, and male bonding through violence are prevalent, foreshadowing their use by John Woo in his own movies when he had found his voice. During this period, the only movie which Leone directed from start to finish was The Colossus of Rhodes from 1961. To give you a brief synopsis, and if you have seen Fistful of Dollars, this may sound familiar. A stranger in town gets involved with various factions entangled in a power struggle, and at times it does feel as though one were watching a dress rehearsal for Fistful of Dollars, but with the wrong costumes. The casting of an American star in the lead adds to this impression. The ending gives new meaning to the term Deus ex machina, as the heroes are helped in resolving the conflict by, believe it or not, an earthquake. For his part, John Woo, before The Better Tomorrow of A Better Tomorrow, worked as director on numerous movies, including many purported comedies. His most accomplished movie in the role of director was Last Hurrah for Chivalry from 1979. In this movie, John Woo adds to the themes of loyalty, honor, and male bonding through violence, those of existential loneliness and melancholy, familiar to viewers of his later crime movies. One can observe character archetypes, tropes, and stylistic devices in a rather rudimentary form, which he would later use to good effect in A Better Tomorrow, The Killer, and Hard-Boiled. Among the character archetypes used, let's mention the honorable hero, the traitor, the powerful but dishonorable leader, the honorable henchman of a dishonorable leader, the loyal friend, the cold-blooded professional who cares only about his craft. All these archetypes play an intrinsic part in Wu's exploration of the themes of his movies. The traitor is contrasted with the loyal friend to illustrate loyalty, and the dishonorable leader is contrasted with the honorable henchman and the honorable hero to illustrate honor. The cold professional is an existentialist figure who operates outside of the realms of loyalty and honor. In terms of stylization, Wu uses techniques that he would perfect in later movies, but which are not as self-assured here. Consider for instance the use of slow motion in this scene. It's used in a rather vague manner, without the modular or contrasted approach, which gives this technique its impact in his later movies. Let me mention in passing the use of candles, which reminds one of their use in The Killer.
Some of those people out there are just nuts. They're just nuts.
We have looked at the first facet of their journey to finding their voice. That is an apprenticeship in a genre in vogue at the time in the local industry. But there is a second facet to this journey, just as essential as the first one. That is, both had a big love of movies and studied them extensively. Leone said, quote, "I was under the fascination of films. I was fascinated by all films, even the worst of them. I have to admit that I was more entertained by the bad films than the good ones, because when something is beautiful, it is there, it is finished, it is done. It doesn't have to be worked upon. But if it is badly realized, sometimes that is more provocative and interesting. If there is an auteur who influenced me, and there is only one, that is Charlie Chaplin. I must have seen 300 films a month for 2 or 3 years straight. Westerns, comedies, gangster films, war stories, everything there was. Publishing houses came out with translations of Hemingway, Faulkner, Hammett, and James Cain. It was a wonderful cultural slap in the face. End of quote. John Woo said, when I was a kid, since my family was so poor, my mother was a big fan of American movies. She would always save some money to take me to the movies. And as a kid, I always felt like I lived in hell. The slums of Hong Kong were horrible. I always had this dream of living in a better place, a place with no crime and violence, a place where people only care about each other and appreciate each other. And I could only find that dream in the movies. And that made me have a very early love of the movies, especially musicals. I remember the first musical I ever saw was The Wizard of Oz, and it was so wonderful. My mother took me to all the classic films. Then, when I was 11 years old, I knew I wanted to be a part of the movies. I would take a piece of glass and I would brush some images on the glass, like cowboys or a Chinese hero like a Monkey King. And then I took a torch, would shine it through the glass, and project the image on a wall. I would move the torch up and down, and the image on the wall seemed to be moving. I think at that moment I found my interest and love of making films. There were no film schools in Hong Kong, so all I could do is learn from movies. We were lucky because we could see all the film masterpieces from all over the world. That's one of the great things about Hong Kong. So by the time I was quite young, I knew all about filmmakers like Fellini, Antonioni, the French New Wave, Jean-Pierre Melville, Stanley Kubrick, Hitchcock, and Sam Peckinpah. So when I was 19, I started working with a group of young people who were also fascinated with movies, and we started making experimental films. End of quote. We have seen that both Sergio Leone and John Woo had a double origin as filmmakers. On the Praxis side, they got hands-on experience in a kind of movie in style in their respective country at the time. And on the Gnosis side, they both studied fervently movies that came notably from America. This common double origin is at the very root of the similitudes between them, because it laid the groundwork for their moment of self-realization, and so determined the kind of directors they would be. That is, directors of hybrid and meta movies. Tune in to part 2 for more on the second phase of their careers.